Hello and welcome. Today we will be going over an essential skill for every debater, flowing. First, we'll go over some of the basics like what is flowing. Next, we'll talk about why taking notes is important. Third, we'll go over how you actually flow. Fourth, we'll go over how to use your flow in a debate. And fifth, we'll review some handy tips and tricks to make you an expert. First, what is flowing? Flowing is simply debate speak for taking notes. This is often done in columns, so we can follow how each point of disagreement evolves throughout the debate. It's important to take notes of what you are saying, what your partner is saying, and most importantly, what your opponent is saying. So why bother? Well, first, you can't respond to your opponent's arguments without knowing what they were. Students who take good notes almost always beat students who don't, especially in junior varsity and varsity rounds, where there are more complex arguments being thrown around by both sides. Taking good notes isn't just some busy work your coach wants you to do during the round. They are a key tool for helping you win the debate. So let's talk about the flow. It's pretty simple if you listen carefully. Keep each main argument made by either side on a different sheet of paper. Write the affirmatives arguments in one color and the negatives arguments in another color. Leave plenty of space between arguments. You never know how much they'll respond to what you say. If the other team responds to an argument, write their answer next to the argument you think they're answering. When preparing your answers to the other team's arguments, write them on your flow next to the argument you're going to respond to. Don't try and write everything down word for word. You won't be able to, so focus on getting the key points. So how do I flow? First, gather your supplies. Multiple sheets of paper is important. Gathering legal size paper, if available, can be helpful. The bigger the better, gives you more space to write down what's going on in the debate round. You'll also need 2 colors of pen, pencil, crayon, or whatever you're going to use to write with. Step 2 is to divide your piece of paper. You'll need one piece of paper divided into 7 columns for the affirmative and any direct responses. For any off-case arguments by the negative, you'll need pieces of paper with 6 columns. The negative should say X off and case, signaling how many pieces of paper you and the judge will need to write down their arguments. If they aren't clear, you can always ask before the speech. Now that you've gathered all of your supplies and set up your paper correctly, it's time to listen carefully. Here's an example case that we'll use throughout this video as a demonstration of how to flow. Here's the 1AC about charter schools and racism. Notice that the key points are listed on the far left side of the page, listing the citation and a few key details. The negative will then respond to our test affirmative. Notice they do not contest that racism is happening now, so we left a gap at the top of our page. They also don't contest that racism is bad. That's our MEMI 2000 evidence. So we left a gap at the bottom of the page. They contest whether charter schools can fix racism. They made 3 arguments to do so, and we wrote them in the middle of the page, in the middle of the column next to our argument that charter schools do solve. This shows the responsiveness by the negative to one of our main points. Your partner, as the 2AC, will then speak. They note that the argument that racism now has been conceded. They note that racism bad from MEMI 2000 has been conceded and make their responses to the negative team in the middle of the page, right next to their answers to your initial statements. Step 5 is to repeat, going back and forth throughout the debate, writing your answers next to the argument you want to answer, moving from left to right with each speech adding another column of information. You'll see that some arguments are contested vigorously, in our example that charter schools are either good or bad for combating racism. Some arguments are conceded, such as in our example, how that racism is bad and that it is happening now. For arguments that are contested, each team will first outline their positions in the 1AC and the 1NC. They will add details in the 2AC and the negative block. This should be the busiest and densest part of your flow. They will then identify key points, comparing and contrasting them in the 1AR, the 2NR, and the 2AR. So how do you use your flow to win the debate? It's simple, really. Write the answers to the other team that you want to use in your next speech on the flow, and then speak directly from the flow when giving your speech. This provides you with a record of what they said and how you responded. This is helpful for both you to keep track of what's going on in the debate and for your partner to know what you said so they can plan their speech. So what are some tips and tricks to be good at flowing? First, clarify. Ask clarifying questions in cross-examination to make sure you catch everything, and review their evidence to fill in the missing pieces or details. Next, focus on key points. Circle, highlight, or otherwise note important arguments on both sides of the debate. Make sure you note if they concede any important arguments. This should be signaled by a blank space on your flow. Let's talk about legibility. Using abbreviations, pictures, or anything else to get you and your partner on the same page is critical, but it's also important you can read your partner's handwriting. Make sure to practice reading their scribble before the tournament. Lastly, number things. Stay organized. Make a number for each argument you're going to make and that they've made. This helps organization for both you and the judge. So how do I improve my flowing? Well, first, flowing takes practice. This can come in any number of situations. By flowing rounds at an actual tournament, by flowing practice rounds when your team gets together between tournaments. You can flow debates on YouTube. You can flow music, testing yourself with unfamiliar songs or quick lyrics to see if you can get everything down. You can also use the playing card activity available on our website to test your accuracy. Can you get a complicated sequence of similar sounding cards down in the right order? The second way to improve your flowing is to review other people's flows to figure out what happened in the round and who won. We have some sample flows available on the Washington Urban Debate League website at the link on your screen. If you have any further questions, don't be afraid to ask me. My email is also available.